Hey, what's up, guys? It's me, Emil, the Armchair IGL, and I just wanted to talk about Falcons and their new roster. Just recently, Falcons has announced that their roster is going to be Boros, Maiden, Magisk, Snappy, and Sampaius. So an Ents core plus Magus from Vitality and Boros, who stays from Falcons. And I wanted to see how this team's going to work and if they can actually contend for titles. So first, I just want to go quickly into Boros. Boros was on Monty, and he made a name for himself really at the major when he just popped off and was destroying teams on land. And Monty made a deep run. But since that time, his teammates have come out and kind of threw a little bit of shade on his name. Um, and so I just thought that was a little interesting and something that worth bringing up as we get into this, which might reflect a little bit on how we can expect Boros to play. So SDY in July of this year, after Monty had replaced Boros with Bro, said, and I quote, "Now we have more structure, and I can rely on people simply not dying when we don't need to," which is basically a shout out to Boros saying, "Hey, Boros was kind of throwing." Waro 2K backs him up in an interview just 2 months later in September, where he says, "I think he will never show the same potential again as with us because no one will understand how to use it being him. He had no discipline. We used him in a run and gun manner. He didn't have to do much in terms of tactics." And then most recently, Boros was part of the Falcons lineup with NBK, Body, Lonks, MHL, and Boros himself. And I looked up I saw an interview that was going around on Twitter, and I just use Google Translate, so I'm not. This is paraphrased, and don't take what I say for granted. But these are the points that really seem to stick out with me, and these are the ones that seem to be more or less pretty solid. There were some other juicy nuggets in there that, due to player names being kind of hard to translate, I didn't really want to include them. But this stuff kind of came through. So one was that Boros just had no respect for MBK, MHL, their opera, or their coach. They would have multiple strategy sessions online, and Boros just never took any notes. He never focused during practice, during their strategy sessions, and this is all according to Ostriker, and he was just kind of on his phone the entire time. And when they tried to approach him and kind of change his attitude towards things, he was just unprofessional, didn't change his ways, and was basically um, given the okay by the management. So basically, the coach just lost uh, all of his firepower really in order to do anything. But it was interesting. He did say that Zonic does have full control of the roster now, meaning he can cut players if he deems them unworthy to be on the team, and that he also can play with their salaries a little bit. So there's like performance bonuses. So Zonic has full control, as I understand it. Um, Again, this is a little bit kind of, paraphrased, and don't take my word for it. Check out the interview, and feel free to read the subtitles, and hopefully you can come to a similar conclusion that I did. So let's just take a look at Boros right now. Um, Again, his rating is decent. It's okay. It's 1.06 in the last 3 months, so that includes some CS:GO and the month of CS2, which was October. Never played against any top 10, 20, or 30 teams. This is all from the top 50 or even below. So yeah, he hasn't really been performing all that well. Relative to his team, he did decently. But as I established in the previous slide, he's just not really a team player. And after watching a couple of his demos, I can confirm that he just doesn't really seem to function well within the overall macro of the team. So on Nuke, for example, he was their ramp anchor, and he's the kind of player that would just push like in the mid round. So after the initial utility kind of dies down, if he threw it at all, he would just push into lobby. And on several rounds, particularly against Sprout, it ended up costing them rounds and even the game. Another downside to BOROS is that, and this is something I tweeted about, is that he has really poor utility usage. I mean, I've found that on Overpass in 20 rounds, he threw 5 HEs and 1 smoke. And the smoke was just to come out short pipe because it was mollied. So he is not much of a team player in terms of the macro, using util to set up his team. I mean, no flashes. But in spite of all that, if you were to steel man his argument, his team won both the games that I had pulled those numbers from. His aim is insane. He does damage, and he is very confident. He's willing to take duels. These are things that I think that if you find the right system, if you find a way to use that aggression, maybe something like Big 2019, 2020 when they had Zantares, or Flames of Vitality, that you can set him up and he can do damage and he can play a role in a team just like he did with Monty. They found a way to use him. I think that is going to be the challenge for Falcons. So positions where you could put him, in my opinion, would be somewhere like A anchor on Mirage, which is where Magisk plays, and we'll get into that later. But someone in that position, you can kind of be set up for like a ramp peak. You can be set up for a Palace peak. You can push Palace. You can push ramp. There's a little bit of room to be aggressive, and it's a little bit more limited in scope and responsibility, which I think is going to be good for a player like BOROS. Now, I don't want to dive too deep on this stuff, but in the last month, his average unused utility on death in terms of money value was 406. And he peaked out at 800. I mean, that is, a lot of people are just kind of overlook that stat. I think it's kind of an important stat because it tells me how someone does in terms of macro. And if you leave, he's over $400. That's like a molly. That's a smoke, and those can be, game deciding on a map like Inferno where utility usage is incredibly important. So yeah, and being in a team with Zonic, who's very utility minded, I'm sure that's going to get corrected, but it's in a way it's a testament to BOROS himself that he can get this far without using utility. I'm looking forward to see what he can do when he learns how to use utility well, especially under a team with Zonic, Snappy, Sampaias, Magisk. I mean, these are all big personalities that are going to expect elite level play. Now, if you look down at his Leadify ratings, I like Leadify because you can it filters out ADR and you can filter the events that you want to look at. So this is the month of October, so all CS2. Full buy rounds, his T side was incredible. I mean, 0.87 KPR, 87 ADR, that's huge. His buy rounds on CT side were abysmal, 0.58 KPR, 67.6 ADR. And like I said, his CT sides are just not great. So he needs a lot of work in terms of his positioning and his decision making, which I fully believe he's going to get with Zonic and Snappy, Sampaias, who are Magisk. And these are all players that are going to really expect him to do better and expect him to use his utility. And I think that they're going to expect more team play. So I think that's already one of the narratives that I'm looking for is how will Falcons improve BOROS, and will they be able to succeed in spite of his poor utility, or like how are they going to highlight his aim? I think that for me that's a very interesting story, and personally I'm rooting for the guy. I hope he does well. I know he can bang hard, so I love seeing fraggers frag out. So the current meta of building a team is you need a star opper. And I think Sampaias is a star opper. The opper needs resources. And when I say resources, I mean the freedom to take peeks with the best spawn, rotating mid-round to take duels. And an example of that is like rotating on nuke to ramp, maybe peeking in, trying to get a deep angle into lobby, just trying to pick them off, taking duels with no fear, and having, teammates support you. The Opera has to find impact. Like, I'm looking at these are three teams that I really like. I like Complexity, but I didn't put them up here. But, they all have these, in one way or another, these teams are built for the current meta. So Zywoo is your top opper. Brokey, who some would argue is not a top opper, but in terms of his team, has the second highest rating on average. And he gets a lot of resources. He's given the freedom to take peeks, to do these kind of what some people would describe as risky plays. But, his team, he knows it, and his team put him to be a win condition, and they've been doing well in CS2. Monacy as well. Now, the second rifler or the second star, I think that has to be Magisk in this position. Now, Magisk really made a name for himself as like one of the best anchors of 2023. And I think that he will have to step up massively here. And I think he can do it. So he was playing kind of like, anchor positions like on Overpass, he would play Monster, which is, great for, his abilities, big spray downs, etc. But I mean, realistically, Monster is is one of those positions where the responsibility is a little bit limited. You're only holding one angle, really. Communication, even, you have to communicate, but it's not as like a role of responsibility like Overpass or a rifle. Where you're using your util, you're taking control of fountain or connector, or you're playing long, and there's a lot of communication because you're in control of a lot. I would really love to see how he fares in that position, because I don't think anyone else on this team can do it. So you need to have someone who has the experience, who can communicate, who is confident, and has the skill to do it. So those are some positions that I think Magisk will have to step into. And that, for me, is one of the storylines of Falcons is, one, who's going to be the second star rifler? And if it is Magisk, can he do it? Because the next position is still even going to be difficult for them to fill. They have, of the remaining players, are BOROS, Maiden, and Snappy. So you're going to need someone in the current meta. The anchors are like overqualified. You have Bit, you have Axile, you have Caserado, you have Magisk, Flames, Yimpat. These are all players who are playing, who have great stats, and either came from a position where they were given more responsibility, and now now it's more limited, and you have to compete against that. So who is that going to be? Is that going to be BOROS? Because BOROS, as I established in previous slides, he's a little bit of a rough diamond. He can definitely aim with the best of them, but does he have the patience? Does he have the temperament to be a good anchor or a good hard entry? I don't know. I think that hard entry, sure, but anchor, can he be a solid anchor? I don't think that he can. He can be the overqualified anchor, but it's going to require a lot of work. And I do think that we're going to need to see how he progresses. It's definitely not going to be an overnight thing. It's probably going to take a little bit of time. But if they can make it happen, then again, that just adds to the narrative that they brought someone of his caliber to where it needs to be, so where he can shine. Now, the low resource, scrappy positional anchor, someone like a Shush or Mezzi, Maiden. I think that Maiden is perfect in this position. I really like watching him play. He just does all the dirty stuff really well. Good utility usage. Knows how to play positionally. So relying on crossfires, good communication. And you can just tell he's a workhorse. You can tell that he's not afraid to get in to positions to sacrifice better weaponry. He's okay to use a Mac 10 or an MP9. He is just happy to get in there and do his what the team asks of him and do it well. And then there's the IGL, right? So one, you have to be able to make good calls, but I've noticed that in the current meta, at least for Vitality, it's like Apex is playing like a total playmaker. He's always setting up his teammates to do something early round. Like he's always throwing flashes at the beginning of the round. And if you watch an interview that Thorin did with Zonic, you can kind of see how Apex took a little bit of that inspiration with him, where Zonic said that basically as the round goes on, it becomes a little bit more complex because what the enemy is doing can be, they can be in more positions than at the beginning of the round. At the beginning of the round, it's kind of more defined as to where people can be. So he liked to play very proactively. And Apex is playing very proactively on Anubis in particular. I mean, he has a flash for almost every site to take a peek. And I think that is the ideal way to play, especially if you're an international team. Kerrigan is always a good initiator, always willing to run in. And he, frankly, last event, he was cracked out and he was doing a lot of damage. So those are the kinds of playmakers or IGLs, playmakers that you're going to need. And I think Snappy fits that perfectly. Now, all these teams have great coaches and support staff. They have a lot of money behind them. And Falcons is no exception. So I think that Falcons, like I said, at positions 2 and 3, it's going to be a little bit shaky. Can Magus be the star? Can BOROS actually be a good anchor on the CT side? Those are the questions I'm looking to answer. So just to reiterate, as I kind of pointed out in the last slide, I really think Sampaius is going to be the man on the team. I think that he is going to have the most resources. I think that he's a very vocal player. I think that he's going to be making a lot of calls. He's going to be helping Snappy out. He's going to be making the rotations. And I think he's going to be a critical piece. Another thing that I didn't bring up, but I actually like how Sampaius is very similar to Device in terms of he's not making like the Monacy style peaks. He's not like Kenny S. He's kind of more taking his shots, a little bit more surgical, a little more precise. And I think Zonic will be able to use that well. So, yeah, I think that they're going to be able to build around Sampaius, definitely. Now, like I said before, Magisk is the big question. Can he step up? Will he be the star rifler? Given the rest of the lineup, I just don't see anyone else who can do it, so it has to be him. Now, can he do it? That is my question. BOROS, will they be able to find a way to set him up for success? I think it'll take some time. If it does happen, it may even just end up being that he doesn't click at all and they just get rid of him. That is a reality. Like I said, I think it'd be great if they could figure out a way to build around him, because he does have that X factor. He does have that ability just to come out, absolutely destroy you, and maybe that'll break the meta. Maybe the utility meta will just be absolutely broken by BOROS, who just doesn't even need the util, and he just ends up running out and shooting you in the head. Unlikely, but it could happen. Madden, I think he's great at where he is. Can he play the number 3 position? I don't know. I think that he does what he does really well as a grunt, just playing dependably, crossfires, positional. I think he'll do well there. And Snappy is a top tier IGL, proven. He's worked with the national lineup. He's worked with these players before, at least 2 of them, and I think that he understands how to make an international lineup work. And I think that he's versatile enough to know that it's going to require some fast plays, some calls out of spawn. It's going to require a little bit more tactical. And with Zonic behind him, I think that they will be a very good coach and IGL combo. But like I said, it really comes down to the roles. I would love to see Magisk just have him be this year. He's only 25. Step into another dimension and really, nail down a position as one of the best riflers of all time. I think that he can do it. I hope he does do it. I hope that this is the team that he does it with. And I hope that BOROS can figure out a way to fit into this team, because this team is going to require a lot from him. I think they're going to chew him out if it has to come to that. And I hope that he shapes up and that he finds a way to be successful. Anyways, those are my thoughts. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll talk to you down in the comments. See you guys there.